Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone, and welcome to this week's Middle Nation Content Talks. This is our fifth episode. So today's speakers are Sister Valkyrie and Brother Nile, and their topics derive from various content on the Middle Nation YouTube channel. And our hopes for today's presentations are to provide more insights, context, and even expand on what Brother Shada so generously made available to us on the channel. And I find it particularly interesting that both topics take the approach from a historical and a theological context. So I'm excited to hear what is in store for us today. So first up is Sister Val. She's from Tanzania in East Africa, and her topic is the Sahel, going back in history. Sister Val, welcome. The mic is yours.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum once again. Uh, Bismillah. I would say, yeah, I'm coming from Africa and then in Tanzania, not from the Sahel, definitely. But I'm trying to just read the history, not necessarily in detail, but just to highlight perhaps what I can say. Major event in the region and how it came to be the Sahel, and what does that mean to the people in the Sahel, and their contribution in terms of geopolitical landscape in Africa and to the globe at large. So I would just say, like, recently we have seen countries like Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali trying to defy the Western colonialism and exploitation, which actually invoke a sense of claiming economic independence from the Western nations. And that actually has something to do with the origin of the region itself. That's what I think it is important that I thought we can have a look at. And to be specific, the Sahel region actually is composed of what we can say 6 countries, which expand from Chad from the eastern, from Chad to Niger to Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal, which was then composed by African what is called like West Sudanic empires, and actually we can recall the major empires which actually existed in mix of some Arab Berbers and Black Africans as the Ghana Empire, which existed from 8th century to 11th, and it had its capital at Kumbisale, and it was doing business with the north, which is Morocco, which was then already Islamic region, and then it was overtaken by Mali dynasty, the Keita dynasty, the Mali Empire from 3rd century to 16th century, and this particular empire now it was already having Islamic, I should say, heritage, because the rulers actually converted to Islam, and it expanded from Niger River Basin to Senegal in the far west. So from basically very interior area of West Africa to the coast of Atlantic, and it was centered at Timbuktu, which actually was a seat which flourished with a lot of scholars from Islamic universities, from Egypt then, and from Arabia when they were going to do Hajj. For example, their rulers were referred to as Mansa. So you had like Mansa Musa and other people who were very, very famous. And they grow very strong. And as we will see, like, as I will say shortly, these actually empire were actually grounded on what is referred to as trans-Saharan trade. But then I would say, before going to what kind of business they were doing, we see after Mali, then the Songhai Empire emerged. Somehow these empires were like overshadowing one another. Then the other one phase out after years, and then the new empire stays. And during Songhai Empire, the rulers were actually referred to as Askirs, where we had like Askia Muhammad and Askia Ishaq and Askia, a lot of them. And these, all of them were Muslims actually, and their capital was in Gao, which we can actually, it was somehow in the border of Mali and Burkina Faso somewhere. And they they were very, how should I say, they were very powerful in terms of military, and they were economically strong compared to the previous empire. But then to the far eastern, there was a very huge empire which was referred to as Kanem-Born. But this particular empire was exceptional. It was not overtaken by any empire. It started from 9th century to 19th century. It was actually based on Chad, and it extended from south, from northern Cameroon today, we can say, to very far north, close to Libya. And their rulers were called as Saifs. And one of the great examples, like this particular empire was Islamic from as 11th century to 19th century, when it was taken by French colonizers. And we see that having that long-standing Islamic heritage from the 7th or almost 11th century to 19th century, that was not something that could be easily erased by the colonialism, like what we can see in other African countries and other countries which were colonized by perhaps Europeans, like British. We see, in Belgians, we see that most of the people were changed perhaps from their traditional religion to Christianity, and then they become very soft. But in this particular region, Islam was their religion. So it was not something you can actually get rid of, as we can see, and as we will see in some videos from Brother Shahid's content. We see that Islam actually is the only proven I should say, mechanism or a way that has successfully changed the people. And when they change for that, then we can see from the Sahel region as an example, they never go back to whatever, what we can say. But this does not mean they were purely Islam, that they didn't have, like, they didn't practice their traditional stuffs. They were like mixed, as we know in most Islamic countries. In from Bangladesh, in where I'm coming from, you will have Islam as perhaps a major religion, but then you have these minor faiths and stuffs. But one thing which is important to what I can say geopolitics and the history of this region is that, as I said, these empires actually flourished under the trans-Saharan trade, and major cities were evolved, and the trade routes and universities flourished, and so many things. But importantly, what was the resources or the goods that were actually in exchange? What were they selling? They used to be selling gold and salt and cola nuts from south, from the house actually, and other products which were actually uh, easy to be found in that region. But as we see, after the scramble for and partition of Africa, 1895, French took over, and they established the exploitative project. And in the process, actually, yes, as we can see, they discovered a lot of minerals like uranium, which is very, very potential and crucial. But through their assimilation, because they tried to do the assimilation policy, and I'm not going to go to detail on how it works, but actually like changing the people to, I mean, to accept like French citizenship, and then you are entitled with these particular privileges less than other people. Some did assimilate, but most of Islamic the people who are there, they didn't actually assimilate, I would say. Otherwise, their naming were changing, and they were using Arabic as their language. It changed and to French, but then their local languages remain very, very strong, because the Hausa is still spoken by more than 7 million people, and they have the Wolof in Senegal, which is also spoken very widely, and other languages. But what I'm trying to establish here is that French actually stayed in that region. I mean, all the countries, to be specific, for not more than 65 years. That was a very short period, we can say, in colonization, but it was long, basing on the nature of exploitation. But then French didn't actually leave the region. As we see, after independence, they had what they call, the countries had to sign what they call colonial tax, whereby the former colonies, to be declared independent, they had to sign this particular contract whereby they pay the French government almost 85% of their income, and they have to deposit it in French central bank. They do it up until today, and any country which were trying to oppose that were faced severe sanction and problems, as the history shows. And this country were only allowed to take 20% of what they have deposited, and it was taken in form of loan and debt, which they have to pay. So we can imagine that the colonialism never actually left the Sahel region. But then, as I said, these people were Muslims, and as we know, as we said, people actually, Muslim actually, they do not actually accept subjugation that very easily. They have this in fitra to kind of, stand for the justice and stuff. But that didn't help much, because actually, as we see, they are still paying their colonial tax. But we see nowadays we have the influence from the Arabian Peninsula, and we have the Russians and the Chinese in the region. And this is due to, again, the discovery of other more goods like gas, oil, and uranium, which the region actually provide more than half of the uranium that is used in the entire world, which actually the Russians and the US and those countries with nuclear powers, the region is like the source of that particular raw material. So we can imagine how tense, and how we can actually foresee that this region is not going to be left alone. And what they do, what I think, is that they use this Islamic heritage, this sense of, claiming justice, and, sense of there's no dhulm and stuff, to impose some Islamist, we can say, juntas and radicalism, to try to sow discord among the Sahel people, so as to actually continue with what they are doing. And I think, I'm coming to an end, I think if the countries which they're actually doing, claiming their independence, and they're trying to do business with Russia, China, and the Arabian Peninsula in mutual benefit, I think that might help, but we know for sure that is not going to go without the Western interference. Nobody is going to leave that particular rich region. Well, in this, what I have said, I intended to leave the Moroccan influence in the region and the Tunisian influence in the region for a purpose, because actually what I was trying to see here is that what is now raising is the claiming of independence, getting rid of the West, and trying to stand by themselves, and having collaboration with the Eastern power, say the BRICS. It is actually forging a new dawn to the region, which we have to look forward to what it will look like. I think I should end up there, and then if there will be questions, stuff, so we can actually explore more of what I have said. So, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, sister.
MashaAllah, sister, that was very informative. I enjoyed going back in time a little bit with that. Sister Salma has left a little infographic here in the chat. It's from Al Jazeera, where the components of a mobile phone, it's largely made up of all the minerals that you will find here in Africa. So, the fact that we're speaking on something that the West claims they've come up with it, they need the resources from Africa to actually create these things. It's, besides the cell phone, a lot of technology comes from having to use all those mineral resources that the Sahel is very rich in. So there will be some resources that we will add to the link. Oh, sorry, when we do upload the video on YouTube, we will add that there for more information. But this article looks very interesting, and I think I would also like to read that. If anybody else would like to contribute, you're more than welcome to do that. Now's your chance. If there's something you'd like to say, would like to say something.
Assalamu alaikum. What is the main Western colonialist proxy on the continent of Africa? If there's a particular nation or nations which are particularly joined at the hip of the West?
Like clan states, which the US are using to explore, I mean, to have their power in Africa?
Yes, to destabilize, to control, to direct the events on the continent of Africa.
Well, I would say generally from Africa, I can say there are these countries which we call in Africa puppet countries, but recently they have demonstrated a bit viewpoint on some policies. But I would say the IMF and the World Bank are the major instrument which actually I think the US is using to control, I mean, to exert its power in Africa, plus their military bases. As we see in Niger, they had this powerful military base, and we don't know what will happen after Niger decide to kick it out. But I would say the monetary, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank through education and stuff, that is the major way that they do. Because actually, what I can say, unlike in maybe Middle East or Asia or Europe, or Latin America in that case, where US used to have perhaps this particular like a client state where they exert their power from there. They actually they rule over all Africa, I would say, only with some great extent in some region and less in some, depending again to resource and their interest with regard to what they call security. So that's what I think is happening. But then I think I needed to say something about where we can actually ask more questions. This region, regardless of all these resources, is the poorest region, we'd say, very poor. The question will be why. And I guess from there, perhaps we can discuss why do we think the region is still very, very poor.
Thanks as well. So Selma did ask a question. I don't know if we can move on, or was there something else you wanted to first expand on that? Okay, so Selma asked in the comments, Ukraine is the American proxy in Europe. What is the African equivalent? What do you think, or who do you think is the African equivalent in Africa?
Well, in Africa, I would say it's number of countries, but Nigeria is also used very much to like be in the West, to have power in the West, especially West Africa. In East Africa, we have Kenya, which is also used very much with the US to try to do some whatever their to bid their whatever stuff they want to do in the region. And I would say there's no one country because Africa is a bit different. It's not like consolidated like Europe. We have African Union, that's true, but we are not that very much consolidated. It is like we have the northern, the MENA region, which is actually purely Arab, we'd say, and in the Niger Congo, where we have what we know, what is happening now in Congo is very catastrophic. But Congo is unruled region again. There is no like stable government stuff for reasons again the exploitation, which is very very huge. But in the southern Africa, they have their history, and basically you cannot say, for example, we are using Uganda to like do your proxy thing in South Africa. But there are countries like Rwanda, which is said to be used as a proxy for Congo, to like mining the Congo, because they have their troops and stuffs in Congo, and Rwanda is prospering. It is getting, it is getting better, but the Congo is, getting worse and worse, and they're like I don't know. But ideally, in these regions, you have countries in a close neighborhood where it will be used to like control other countries, not necessarily one country with the entire Africa. Because again, as I said, we are like different from different regions, a different history, different communities, and you cannot, we don't have like a how should I say, like European Union, as you said, they are one, they have their currency, they have their government, they have their parliament. We do have that, but it is not as powerful as the European Union, I would say.
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to say, with regard to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Congo, this is literally the most minerally rich place on the earth. And that is why you see it in constant flux and destabilization, because the people who actually live there and actually mine the minerals get very little economic benefit from their work. The mines are owned by others, and so it's a very bad situation. And the reason why the Sahel region, which is such a rich region in minerals, including gold, is poor, is because the money goes to France and other Western nations. This wealth is literally what Europe is built off of. That is why there is such a high standard of living on the so-called European continent and such a low standard of living in these Muslim nations. And so the agreements that they signed are just equal death for them. And they have to get rid of those agreements, strengthen their military, because the U.S. trains and sends these insurgents in to attack the people, to destabilize the area, so that the rulers of the nations have to concentrate on trying to defend their civilian populaces from terrorists who are completely trained, funded, and armed by the United States and other Western nations. So this is the game that has been going on, and we know what it is, and it's just coming up with a system to stop it.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Waheeda. You've said something very, very remarkable, because in the Sahel, as we see, there are these groups, factions, I would say, several of them. And what makes you think this is a common region is that this faction actually operate cross-border. They go from Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritania to Niger, to Chad. And it's like this they kind of impose the idea of having khilafa and stuff, and it looks like it's a soft spot actually to easily navigate, and like to throw those people in each other's throat, which makes the situation even catastrophic, because then the West is now peacefully like exploiting whatever they want to. But what we can see with what what is going on in the region with regard to reclaiming their resources, the control over their resources, we actually don't know what that will bring exactly, because as we see, they do not do that by themselves because they actually still need technology, and this context they will need Russia and China and other countries to do that, which is they are enemies of the West. And that actually now you become like a conflict zone whereby the superpowers, whatever, they are fighting on your land, using yourselves, like your machineries, local machineries, to like kill one another, and like making the region go in flames. And I guess that's very dangerous with regard to the region. I mean, like combining these, like you have the Russian, the China, the West, and the people themselves with this Islamic heritage, as we are saying, like people who are there to stand for themselves. They are very much against Tulma and stuff. You can imagine what comes out of that. And having been paid now, for example, they have paid more than $500 billion to the French, the region, imagine. So the poverty level will continue to be striking. That's very frightening to be honest.
Well, sister, I agree with everything that you said, and you've really made some salient points here. And I truly believe that the continent of Africa is the main point that Muslims need to liberate in order for us as an ummah to prosper internationally. Islam is the number one religion on the continent of Africa and the number two religion on the continent of Asia. And our nations and our peoples have been subjected to all manner of violence in order for Western powers who became militarily excellent and thus exceeded us and used that military power to economically rape our lands and our people. So it's very important for us to understand this. And if you understand this, then you really start to see how important what Brother Shaheed is teaching is. It's just foundational to our ability as an ummah to rise on this planet and be able to take care of our own people properly. Its importance cannot be overstated. His positions are profoundly moral, and this is what we are lacking. The people who are committing the atrocities in the various minerally wealthy African nations, and there is no African nation that isn't minerally wealthy, the people who are committing the atrocities are, are not, white people. They're not people from Europe or America. What they're doing is they're sending in a few people to train them and to reinforce these separatist extreme ideologies and turning them loose to shoot other people from the same region. So there's a moral failing amongst our people. We don't have sense enough yet to stop murdering each other. And it's just so very, very important that we do what we can to try and spread the understanding that Brother Shaheed has been blessed to give us, because that's just foundational to our ability to begin to address a mentality that is widespread in underdeveloped Muslim nations, and unless that mentality is successfully addressed and put down, we're going to continue this cycle.
Well, that's very true, Sister Wahida. And I guess the series that Brother Shahid is going to have about decolonization, psychological decolonization is really important. But how do we get that down to the people, especially in the region where conflict is, verging? Because ideally, that's what you said is actually the basic of the problem, that we have this Muslim majority, population there, everything. But what what is composing their mentality? What do they think of their future? That's something very, very profound. And I think the Middle Nation uh, content, teaching, I mean, the how should I say, the ideology, the objectives and things, if they will get down to even a small part of a population, then it will start to like trick from there. It will be helpful, really, because as I said, these people, they have what you can say moral problem, but ideally, I think they are weaponizing their idea of, having this heaven khilaf or something like that, and that's something very dangerous. I think very dangerous. Nisa.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was very, very wonderful to listen to. I learned quite a lot there. If anybody else has anything to contribute, you're more than welcome to say now. We can move on to the next topic. Let me know if you got something to say. Okay, then we're moving along. So thank you so much as well for your time and for your wonderful presentation. I love speaking about Africa. I like listening about Africa. So thank you for that. Um, then we move on to the next speaker, which is Brother Nell. And the topic that he's chosen is very important for people around the world to be aware of, and Allah also rewarding for his efforts. So, Brother Nell, can you take the mic?
Yes, thank you, Nisa. Can you just hear me? I want to confirm my connection is stable before I start.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Okay, wonderful. Well, Bismillah, thank you. So I'll be talking about European paganism and Christianity and compare and contrast the core beliefs of ancient pagans in Europe and pagans in Asia as well, to the core doctrines of the Catholic and Orthodox Christians that live today, right? So to start off, I will quote an ayah from Surah At-Tawbah, verse 13, where Allah says, "The Jews say Uzair is the son of Allah, while the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. Such are their baseless assertions, only parroting the words of earlier disbelievers. May Allah condemn them. How can they be deluded from the truth?" This is going to be the basis of my talk, basically to show that the ancient pagans had very similar beliefs to the contemporary Christians. First off, I'd like to dedicate a portion of my talk to discussing the pagan beliefs of Northern Europe, and this is based on the book The Lost Beliefs of Northern Europe by Hilda Ellis Davidson. Right. The first thing I'd like to mention is the anthropomorphism that is found in pagan gods. Essentially, they were both human and divine, so they retained human traits, often depicted as like lowly human traits, like negative human traits. And they behave like human beings, right? Whilst retaining their divine essence. So the author says, um, and I quote, "Stories of the gods, however, must have been told from very early times, and as these developed, the deities were likely to take on more human shapes and characteristics while retaining majestic or demonic powers." Right. So essentially, the author also makes a claim that the anthropomorphic figures of gods were known in the Northern Bronze Age, but the Romans were actually fashioned the deities in the form of men and women, and obviously they gradually became popular among the native population. We will come back to this a bit later when we talk about the Christian doctrine. The second thing I'd like to point out is their acts of worship. So in pagan communities, you essentially had priests, and in the ones that did not have priests, you had kings that acted as links to gods, right? It was the duty of the king to communicate to gods whatever message they wanted on behalf of the people. Feasts, huge feasts, were made where they sacrificed animals and drank ale in honor of the gods, right? So I'll quote a short passage from the book where the author says, "The essential element on such occasions was the feast, in which all took part, and this was a commensal meal shared with the gods. The brewing of the ale or mead was of particular importance, and this was hallowed to the gods before the feasting began. The gods were honored in a body at the feast, although the brewing of the drink was especially associated with Odin, and the animal sacrificed might be the symbol of a particular god, as the boar was linked with Freyr. The obligation to drink to the gods at such feasts may have influenced the Christian custom of drinking to Christ or to various saints at the medieval guild fests in Scandinavia." This is also a very important point, which I will also come back to a bit later. The next thing is the veneration of the dead. So in pagan cultures, the dead were venerated and the burial ground of kings was deemed sacred. They believed the spirits of powerful dead people were guardians and helpers of the living. So the author says, the Celtic custom of treasuring the heads of dead enemies seems at least to have been partly based on the belief that this brought strength and good fortune to the victor, a victor of a battle, obviously. Graves of former kings were regarded as sacred places and also as centers of inspiration, uh, which is a very strong link to the Orthodox beliefs as well. The next thing is holy places. So in pagan societies, holy places were associated with dead people, spirits from the other world, and the supernatural. The author says these were reminders of the divine world and usually places of offering, sometimes marked by signs of burning or animal bones. Occasionally, some ceremonial object has been abandoned there, as in the marshes and peat bogs of Denmark and northern Germany. It is very important to note that there were many holy places. So there wasn't just one designated sacred place. You could find them scattered all over the country, right? The next thing I'd like to mention, and this is closely connected to Christian beliefs, is the Aryan myths of sun gods. This is based on the book Aryan Sun Myths, the Sarah Elizabeth Titcomb. So basically, the Aryans believed that the sun was the son of the sky or the heaven father, and that the Immaculate Virgin, the earth, was the mother of the sun. As the sun begins its apparent annual northward journey on the 25th of December, this day was said to be his birthday and was observed with great rejoicings. As he approaches midsummer, he appears in all his splendor. He has reached the summit of his career. Henceforth, his power diminishes, and he meets with an early and a violent death from which there is no escape. The bright sun of summer is slain, crucified in the heavens, and pierced by the spear, thorn, or arrow of winter. At his death, there is darkness over all the land. He descends into hell or Hades. In ancient times, hell or Hades was a place neither of reward nor punishment, what was simply the home of the dead, good and bad alike. The word primarily signified nothing more than the hollow grave, hole, pit, or cavern. On the 22nd of December, the sun enters the sign Capricornus, or the goat, and appears to remain in the same place for 3 days and 3 nights, and then begins to ascend. This was said to be the resurrection of the sun from Hades or the grave. At Easter, the sun has been below the equator and suddenly rises above it. It rises triumphant over the powers of darkness and cold. The doctrines of original sin and the fallen condition of man were not unknown to the primitive Aryan, who, in order to propitiate his gods, atone for sins or avert calamities, offered sacrifices to them. In the course of time, it began to be imagined that the gods demanded something more sacred as offerings or atonements for sin. This led to the sacrifice of human beings, at first of slaves and those taken in war, and finally of their own children, even their most beloved and firstborn. It came to be an idea that every sin must have its prescribed amount of punishment, and that the gods would accept the life of one person in atonement for the sins of others. From this arose a belief in the redemption from sin by the sufferings of a divine incarnation, by death on the cross or otherwise. Now, this all sounds very, very familiar to the official Christian doctrine. And essentially, what it is like a blood payment for the sins of humanity, right? Where the pagan gods did not simply accept tauba, they did not accept repentance, they had to be paid for the sins by the humans, right? And obviously, the concept of human sacrifice is found in Northern European and European paganism in general. So this is not something exclusive to the Aryans. Now, the second point I like to emphasize, and well, actually, the second part is about the core Christian beliefs, and this part is based on two documents. The first one is the Essential Orthodox Christian Beliefs, produced by Orthodox Church in America, and the Official Catechism of the Catholic Church. So basically, the core belief of Christianity is the Jesus Christ, who is fully God and fully human, fully man. So Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is fully God, meaning has a divine will, and fully human, meaning has a human will, sent by his Father as the Redeemer. Through the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the humanity is forgiven for their sins. So we see here that the idea of uh, a god or a deity possessing two wills is not something unique to Christianity. It was found in pagan cultures across Europe. The book says the church would, in the coming centuries, confess both his full humanity and his full divinity combined in one person, the divinity and humanity existing together, unconfusedly, unchangeably, indivisibly, inseparably. The Son shares the essence or the ousia with the Father, eternally begotten by him, and with the Holy Spirit forms the Holy Trinity. So the author goes on to say, though Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are all co-equal and co-eternal, the Father is the Aishia, the cause of the Son and the Spirit, not in terms of time, but hypostatically in terms of their personhood. The fathers refer to this as the monarchy of the Father. And this very much resembles the pagan belief of human deity that comes down to earth and sacrifices his life to appease the gods. But obviously, in this case, the sacrifice is the god himself as well, which is slightly confusing. Now, the second thing is obviously the atonement for the sins of humanity. according to Christian belief, Jesus Christ is the sacrificial Lamb of God. So lamb is a very interesting term that they use, because lamb is obviously an animal, and this resembles the pagan belief that the animal represents a god, or is the symbol of a god, right? As we saw in Scandinavian cultures, boar was the symbol of Freyr. And Jesus Christ sacrificed his human form, so his like second form, second will, whatever you want to call it, to redeem humanity and to save those who accept him. After dying, he rose from the dead on the third day and descended to heaven. And this is very much similar to the Aryan myths of the sun god, who remained dead in the Hades, in the hell, right? And then rose on the third day and basically illuminated the world. And the similarity is striking, honestly speaking. The next point is veneration of the dead. Now, this is very close to home, actually. I'm personally from the Balkans, and I live amongst Orthodox Christians. In their theology, powerful and pious dead people who dedicated their lives to the church become saints who are invoked in prayers and asked to intercede on behalf of the living. Their graves are of significant importance and are considered sacred for Christians. The most high and most important saint, obviously, is Virgin Mary in both Catholic and Orthodox Christianity. Saints are immortalized through church iconography. And again, this bears resemblance to the pagan beliefs of this idea that the dead can actually help the living through their intercession, because they're powerful spirits, and they have a link to God, right? Or in pagan beliefs to gods. And the last thing I'd like to point out, the last similarity is the Eucharist. And as I think Salma also shared a comment in the room, yeah, this is actually very, very similar to the pagan belief that they somehow have to eat the flesh of the symbol of God. And obviously, the Eucharist, according to the author, is our participation in the saving self offering of Christ. When we eat his body and drink his blood, we receive his divine life and abide in his salvation, receiving forgiveness, healing, transformation, and the power of the Holy Spirit. So, all of this, I think, can actually show us that there are striking similarities between ancient pagan beliefs and Orthodox Christian beliefs. All these beliefs that I quoted were found in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and core beliefs of the Orthodox as well. And I'd like to end with a very interesting point that was made by Dr. Ali Atai from Zaytuna College in California. He's a biblical scholar. He's a Sunni Muslim. And he basically asserts that when Saul of Tarsus, or Paul, as he's widely known, when he wanted to spread the message, his idea was, because these pagan beliefs were very popular at that time, like across the regions. His idea was to present Jesus Christ not as, co-eternal, co-equal with God, but actually as the Son of God, as a lesser deity, very much like ancient pagan deities. So this idea that Jesus Christ has always been regarded as co-eternal and co-equal with God, according to the doctor, is dubious at best, right? And actually, the author of the book Orthodox Christian Beliefs himself says that, according to their belief, the people of Israel during the times of Moses, right, for example, were not ready for accepting the Holy Trinity. So Jesus did not reveal himself at that time because they had to establish the strong foundations of monotheism, and only when they have done that, then obviously, according to them, Jesus Christ revealed himself to be part of the Holy Trinity, and he revealed, which, in my humble opinion, does not really hold up. And I don't really want to offend anybody, but does not make any sense to any monotheist, be it Jew or Muslim. So basically, that's it. Really, I don't really want to take too much of your time. If you have any questions, or we can have a short discussion about this, go ahead, please. Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother. That was incredibly fascinating to listen to what you have to say. Is there anybody that would like to? Can I call on anybody to ask a question? Rashid, you've got
Yes.
okay.
Yes, I have a question regarding the tasawwuf practices, because in some certain type of niches of tasawwuf and Sufi Islam, they actually have the not similar because, or let's say they have the similar approach to saints, because they say that saints are the friends of God, and that they have like a certain type of ability to even actually after death interfere with the human, with the living, and that they have like certain spiritual powers within the barzakh. Yes, and I wanted to know if that is also like an adoption of pagan practices in the Muslim type of environment. Yes.
Well,
Nisa, can I
if
say
I may, brother. Sorry, Val, if you'd like to comment, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
not commenting. Actually, I think he's referring to something like tawassul, like making a prayer through, like invoking. Let's say I'm just using
Intercession,
it.
right?
Yeah, intercession, like using Allah's, like Allah say, like "Walillahu asmaul husna fad'uhu biha." You have to use Allah's name to call Him, to invoke Him. And I think he's talking about when you have these like sharifs and walis and people who hold like some significance in terms of we can say piety, something like that. But that's, I think, is tawassul, and it is a bit different. I don't think it is it is fair to actually link it exactly to paganism or that level, how should I say, shirk, because that's very far, I guess. I mean, it will be like stretching it to a very far end, which is not there actually when it comes to Islam, I suppose. I'm not calling that, but I guess brother Ozi, I don't know how to say his name. We can go through and maybe go through the reading of how the Sufism practicing the tazkiyah, as you say, the tasawwuf, but that is about purifying one's souls and trying to get, being pure and stuff personally. But this intercession you're saying, I think it is tawassul. It is not tasawwuf.
Well, I mean, I don't pretend to be a Muslim scholar at all, but what brother talked about is not really found in the Quran and authentic hadith, as far as I know. We are, as Muslims, directed to God, and we don't really have any intercessors in that view. Now, obviously, if a certain practice entered the people of Islam, some people of Islam, and I'm familiar with that. I mean, it does happen in the Balkans as well. Bear in mind, this was once a pagan pagan land, right? But I would not attribute that to the core like Orthodox Sunni Islam. And that might be an influence of a particular culture, of a particular belief on the people of particular regions. So that's what I'm going to say about that, really. Also, I read Shahid's question, what moral rules and conduct did paganism teach? Well, to my knowledge, paganism is a broad term. If we talk about like Northern European paganism, they primarily taught that you have to obey the king. The king is the authority, the link to God, and you have to sacrifice yourself for the king. In terms of moral rules and conduct, I'm not overly familiar with that. I would say that there is a great deal of nihilism in those pagan cultures, a great deal of hopelessness and desperation. And I think one of their main beliefs was achieving, and I'm talking about like northern pagans, was achieving immortality or fame through death in combat, in battle. But other than that, I can't really say. I mean, I haven't studied that enough to be able to provide a comprehensive answer, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to contribute? Can be more than welcome to take the mic and have your say.
I would, for example, ask Brother Nail to link that paganism heritage in Christianity in terms of how then the Europeans, organize their lives and how that affect them when it comes to interaction with other people who are not them. Because I think it has some impact, a very huge impact to the way they see themselves, like different or something, anything related to that.
Well, actually, I think that it may sound strange. I think that ancient pagans were much more tolerant of others than Christians, because we know for a fact they traded with the Muslims during the times where Muslims were demonized by the Catholics in Europe. But I mean, to answer your question, there is this belief that you have to see to believe. You have to have something tangible to believe. You cannot just believe. Okay, you cannot just make dua. You have to go through people. You have to go through the material objects in the world, and obviously, you have to worship a man. Okay, who is the embodiment of God. So I think that's the basic link between paganism and Christianity, the worship of the seen, not the unseen, really.
You're
That's
actually
my
right.
take on it. I'm not a theologian, so
I,
yeah.
No one is actually, but I think you're right because the very first verse in Genesis in the Bible, it talks about how God created man in his own shape, in his form, in his image, we'd say. And then what I was trying to ask you actually is, the way the European hijacked, I would say, Christianity and imposed those paganistic beliefs in it, so much entrenched that they had this God, which was white, I would say, and how that actually now, because I think they use that, how that is actually they used it as a mode of conduct or moral conduct or of other people, or even or among themselves as well. Because I get that image that you have to see. You have to see the God to worship it, and the God is not going to accept you unless you go through something, and those kind of stuffs. And these people are white, And what does that actually translate? If I may be more direct, translate to normal conduct like interactions when it comes to other people. Now, let alone the paganism, the Christianity is there actually up until now we can see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You get
Well,
it?
actually,
They are the religion of the state, I would say, up until now, though not really,
right.
but yeah, they are.
The sentiment is there definitely. The word paganism is a pejorative term. It is meant to denigrate the others. Okay. So when Christianity spread throughout Europe, they saw these people worshipping their gods in the countryside, and that's where the word paganism comes from. The rural folk, the folk of the countryside. So, like from the get-go, Christianity was never a tolerant religion, and the people who adopted that mindset always otherized different people. So they would call them like pagan, heathens, this and that. And if they did not convert, well, we know what happened. It was death, right? It wasn't just about accepting their rule, living in their society. They had to convert, right? That's how Christianity spread in Europe. It wasn't spread through, through a noble message of Christ dying for your sins. It was, you accept that, or you feel the wrath of God. And I think today, I mean, they still have that mentality where they believe they are on the top of the world, and they are, the continuation of the chosen people, really. Even though obviously many of them are not really believers, but the mentality is there. The mentality is there, and it's so ingrained. I mean, I'm not talking about people I don't know. I'm European myself, okay? Even though some Europeans don't like that, but I'm much closer to the cradle of European civilization than many Europeans are. So I can feel that, like even today, if you say you're from Europe, or you have a Christian background, you are much more revered than if you say if you are from, I don't know, China or Mali. Okay, that's my take on it, Val. I mean, I think it is the like the wide burden. We have to save these heathens from their backward ways. Okay, even though we don't really believe in Christ anymore. I mean, we're still religious, but that missionary mentality still persists. And I don't think it's very easy for them to get rid of it, to be perfectly blunt with you.
How did what's essentially a Middle Eastern religion, which is Christianity, how did it become a European religion? I mean, do you understand what I mean? Like when I talk about Christianity, like I have some idea, but I'm just wondering if Nail may have some concept of answering this question, because I distinguish European Christianity and all other form of Christianity, because I'm from Kerala. In Kerala, we have a community called the Syriac Christians. These are descendants of Syrians who converted to Christianity, shortly after Nabi Isa, alayhi salam. So they have a distinct expression of Christianity as opposed to the Latin Christians, who were Indians who converted to Christianity post-colonialism. You know what I mean? So how is it that, like, I mean, I get it, the Emperor Constantine and the centralization of the religion and all of that, but how is it that it became a European thing? Like Christianity is basically a European religion, but it's anything but. But we've come to accept this. I'm just thinking out loud here,
Right.
but do you follow my question?
I do. I mean, you have to remember that before the Council of Nicaea, before they established core, Christian doctrines and beliefs, there were many sects of Christianity that they suppressed because they did not accept this polytheistic, henotheistic vision of the religion, right? So, like from the get-go, they adopted this essentially like Western Roman pagan concept of Christianity, and through brute force, through suppression, through persecution of those sects, they arose to power, and obviously they established the church from very early on, after the council, and they began, just persecuting everybody, right? Everybody who thought differently. Another thing I think is also relevant is the use of language. I mean, we're talking about Jesus Christ, that comes from Greek, Jesus. That's not what the Aramaic word for Jesus is, or the Arabic. Like in Aramaic, as far as I know, it is Yeshua. In Arabic, which is a Semitic language, Isa. So they appropriated the core person of Christianity. I mean, obviously Isa ibn Maryam, right? And they kind of made it their own through language. The scripture was obviously in Greek. Okay, it was not in Syriac or Aramaic, Arabic. I mean the New Testament that we know today, obviously. So I think they used brute force and language to do it, in my humble opinion. Right, but I would
Well,
actually direct you to the work of Ali Attai. I think he's very knowledgeable on the topic, and he'll be able to provide you with solid answers.
and
Sorry,
I
Val,
think
you were going to say
no,
something. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think Salma raised a very important point in terms of distinguishing what kind of Christianity is that, because as we see from history, in Ethiopia, the Abyssinia King Najash accepted Islam, and their Christianity was different. The Orthodox kind of stuff. The Christianity in Russia is a bit different, and the European version, as we see, the most brutal one, I would say, is different. And coming to languages, yes, as you said, I was about to say that it is very amazing to see the way they cover their brutality in terms of, the other side, like love. Some people, when I had this conversation with people, and they will like direct connect Christianity with love, but actually they are doing the very opposite thing when it comes to reality. And naming and wording is very important. But I would say, like Salma Hari is a very important thing, that when we discuss this, and I think you actually put it very clear, Neil, so there's no conflict, that you connected European paganism and Christianity, basically the European version of Christianity. And I think that's very important to say. Sister Waheeda wanted to say something. You there, sister?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. After the Council of Nicaea, which was in 325 AD, it took quite some decades before Christianity was declared the religion of the Roman Empire. That didn't happen until 380, when an emperor named Theodosius is the one who made that declaration. And they specifically declared Nicene Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire, and thus the other sects and groups of Christians were all deemed heresies or heretical, and they were outlawed. And so there was, of course, some force involved in getting rid of these heretical, in the eyes of Nicene Christians, groups. And it is the Council of Nicaea that declared that Mary was the mother of God. And so from this break with the original teachings of Jesus, you have everything else. And when painters began to paint Jesus, the painters of Europe began to paint Jesus, they painted him looking like them. And as the Europeans became the greatest people with regard to warfare on the earth, they were able to spread this image, and it's the image that the entire planet, I maintain, is still under today and is in everyone's subconscious, that the white man is God. And it's just an untenable position for a person religiously, and it is Islam that has no chosen people, no man God. You know, it's the most freeing religion, because your background, what you look like, or your gender, your station in life do not matter. You are judged according to your piety, your goodness. And so it's literally the only religion on earth in which true human equality is foundational in its practices.
Well said, Sister Waheeda, and it's so true. So, guys, with that said, I think we've come to the end of today's Middle Nation Content Talks. And for me, I'm walking away with this a little bit more knowledgeable and have a few different opinions that I need to sit and research. And thank you so much for Sis Val, that is knowledgeable on both things that she spoke about or where she contributed today. And it's always such a pleasure listening to her speak. And Brother Nell, of course, always, you know, the way you present and your knowledge. MashaAllah, you both are such a wonderful duo to be around every single day. So, with that being said, is there anybody else that would like to suggest a topic for next week or to volunteer? You can speak, you can host, you can decide what it is that you would like to do next week. It would be nice if we can decide today, and then you know you've got the whole week to plan, and it would be just a lovely thing to know before the time. If not, you can contact myself or Sisvel or Niall with your topic and who you want to speak with and who your co-speaker will be. And if you can even do your whole thing with a host, we don't mind. We encourage all the participation. So with that said, we're done for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.